My opponent wants to know why it took us 5 years to settle the last contract. Well, as usual, she has her numbers wrong. It wasn't 5 years, but it was a long 4 years. Although the first part of those 4 years, the pattern had not yet been established. And no, we can't leap ahead of the UFT and DC 37 and have the city negotiate with us first. Maybe she's got some trick up her sleeve to do that, but nobody else has succeeded at that since 1967, so good luck on that one. But nonetheless, it did take us a much longer time than we planned on. We weren't planning on taking a long time in this negotiation whatsoever. We had done very well on the immediately prior contract. We had gotten 4 points across that we didn't think we were going to get, but we won all 4 of those, so we thought, all right, we can relax a little bit and just get this money quickly. Well, that turns out we were wrong. And the reason why it took so long was because of the city primarily, although we did have one thing we were guilty of. You see, we had said to them since the year 2000, thereabouts, in negotiations, that they had this ridiculously stupid managerial pay plan, which was absurd and getting worse every year that we were organizing more people from the old managerial pay plan into our union, where their salaries began to go up and their minimum salaries began to go up. And we were outpacing the managerial pay plan and making it look ridiculous. But we said that back in the year 2000, but we weren't going to go on strike over it. We weren't going to make a big issue of it. We weren't going to hold up our contract for an hour and a half. We just told them they were wrong in the year 2000. And then every single contract after that, as their position became ever more absurd, we kept on throwing this in as a throwaway demand in the contract, where we'd bring it up, we'd tell them how wrong they were, they would listen to us, but we wouldn't stick to that one demand. We would drop that demand in order to get the rest of the contract through. But we kept telling them how wrong they were. Now this time it turns out, I was surprised, they were interested in it. They actually asked me to come back time and again to explain it. It seemed like every time I came back, there was more members of the Office of Management and Budget there to hear it. There may have been some dispute going on between OMB and OLR. Labor Relations may have thought that Budget really had to listen to what we were saying because what we were saying made really good sense. I mean, by this time, if you came in our largest title series as an analyst, and you were at the level of associate staff analyst, your boss theoretically would be an administrative staff analyst. So therefore, of course, your boss would make more than you, right? Well, no, not according to the managerial pay plan. That wasn't necessarily true at all. In fact, the minimum salary for an associate was 25% more than the minimum salary for an administrative staff analyst level M1. Now that's nuts. Usually in civil service, which doesn't pay all that well, even as you move up, they'll give you like a 10% bump from the minimum of one job to the minimum of the next higher job. That way you might get more money than that by seniority eventually because you hung around for a long time at a lower title. But normally speaking, there was an advantage to moving up because the salaries were higher on that basis. Only not in this case because of a guy named Ed Koch who completely screwed up the managerial pay plan and a series of mayors who had paid no attention to it. Well, we paid attention because we kept organizing more and more managerial employees and pointing out that this is nuts. Now, once they were in our union, we wouldn't let that happen to them. We would get them more money, but the point is, it was crazy what was going on. It just was. And to our surprise, this time they listened. I don't know what kind of arguments were going on between budget and labor relations or who else was involved. I don't know if they got any higher level than that, the deputy mayors or mayor. I don't know who was talking about it because they didn't tell me. But they kept holding up our contract even though we had settled everything else because they wanted to hear more about this. And then came COVID. Now, my opponent apparently hadn't heard of COVID or something because she wondered why it took so long. Well, there was COVID in between and they weren't going to meet with us and they weren't going to meet with anybody because they couldn't get their people together. And nor should they have done so because it would have been probably fatal for a number of them to do so. So that slowed things down right by itself for like at least a year and a half. However, we were pushing, and all of those who were members at the time, as it happens, my opponent wasn't actually a member at that point in time, so she wasn't getting that mail, I guess. because she hadn't, come back and joined the union yet. But nonetheless, as the members who were getting the mail know, we were pushing quite hard. We threatened unfair labor practices more than once. We were getting to file all kinds of papers to go to OCB directly, to impasse and beyond. The city kept on blinking and going to agree with meet with us and to become a little more reasonable. And finally, they presented to us that they wanted to increase like 22 of the minimum salaries dramatically, in some cases by thousands and thousands of dollars. Yeah, we said, that's a good idea, but we don't really much like the chart you came up with. We think that you're kind of like not doing this right. Yeah, but they're the ones who make these decisions, they told us. And we said, yeah, but you make so many bad decisions, maybe you should rethink this one. And then they also came up with a hilarious line. They said to us, we should pay for this change since we agreed it was a good thing. Well, we did agree it was a good thing, but if you don't mind, we had spent from the year 2000 until the year 2021 making it very clear that the one thing we were never going to do was pay for this thing. Because it was a deliberately made, it wasn't a mistake, it was a sin committed by Ed Koch against civil service by his playing this game. Paying bosses less than their subordinates. Who's he kidding? But we weren't going to pay to correct it, and we didn't think we should have to, and we weren't going to. And we had said this consistently all the way through every single negotiation. And now all of a sudden they come back to it and say, and would you mind paying for the people's raises? Not out of our contract. We have all the money in our contract already coming to us. We've been waiting for it for, my God, too long already. And no, we're not giving you any of that money to pay for this. Oh, it's a good idea. Yes, it is a good idea. But you're going to pay for it. They thought we were kidding for a moment and a half, and we took the case right away toward impasse, and that's it. And our argument was very clear. You made this demand finally. You made changes. And you brought it up when the contract was really over. The 4 years had come and gone before you really get around to this. But you made it clear that you think it's a good idea by bringing it up as a demand. Fine. Now, you try to find any arbitrator on the face of the earth that will agree that we should pay for it after you said it was a good idea. You pay for it. Management pays for what management thinks are good ideas. The result was we didn't have to go to impasse. They met with us. They compromised on the chart. They gave us quite a few improvements all over the place in terms of that. They didn't ask us to pay one nickel towards it. They came up with a strange way of handling it, red circling some people, but most of them will eventually get the money soon enough as time passes, one way or another, through promotion or transfer or anything else. But the reality is, the reason why this contract took longer than it should have, it was the city of New York. It wasn't really us, except that we had the correct idea that they eventually admired enough to follow. But why is my opponent suggesting a quicker contract is always a better contract? Is it because she believes that? Because if she believes that, she couldn't be more wrong. Quite often, a quicker contract is a good way to slowly but surely make your job worth less and less and less over the years. That's a really foolish idea. To take a wonderful example right near us, the Marine Engineers Beneficial Association were offered a really bad deal 12 years ago. And they said no. And they said no. And they said no. And they said no. And as the city slowly but surely began to run into a problem of nobody new wanted to come and work for the job, given the fact that they weren't paying the people with the credentials sufficient to recruit anybody new. They'd go someplace else for more money. Slowly but surely, MEBA began to win its victory. And at this point in time, it looks to me like they're going to have one heck of a victory. It's going to be a huge settlement, quite unprecedented. And going back 12 years, we're not talking a 5-figure retroactive paycheck, we're talking a 6-figure retroactive paycheck, and a gigantic increase in price. But had they caved in the first year back 11 years ago, or the second year, or the third year, they wouldn't be getting any of this money, and they wouldn't be getting any of these raises. So for my opponent to wish to campaign on the basis of, I'll get it for you faster. Yeah, and you'll get it for them less. And that's not a good thing for labor. That's never a good thing for labor.